and an official good morning to all of you. Welcome to the City Planning Commission's public meeting of March 30th, 2022. Good to see you all, commissioners. Welcome. We have a number of items to cover today, but before we get into them, I'm going to ask Ryan Singer, who is the Senior Director of Land Use and Commission Operations, to outline some general information about the remote public hearing and how one may participate if they were so inclined. Ryan, go ahead.
Sure. If you wish to speak, you must register through the NYC Engage portal. A link to join the hearing is on the landing page after you register. Please don't close the landing page without first clicking on the link. If you're accessing the hearing via phone and wish to speak, you must first register with the dial-in participant hotline at the numbers listed on the screen. If one of the numbers is busy, please try another one. The meeting ID is 618-237-7396. Press pound to skip the participation ID. The password is the numeral 1. The phone numbers are also posted on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. Note that no matter how you're accessing the hearing or the meeting, you must register if you want to speak. You'll have the option to turn on your camera if you're joining the meeting online. So when it's your turn to speak, you'll be notified and promoted to a panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. Please listen closely for your name to be called. There will be a short period where it will appear that you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, you should rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If you're accessing the hearing via phone, your name will be called from the list of registered speakers. Once your name has been called, you're given the temporary ability to unmute yourself. You do this by pressing *6 on your phone. For those listening to the hearing through the online live stream who have not yet registered to speak but decide they wish to do so during the hearing, you must first register to speak through the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal. It's not possible to testify through the online live stream. The same goes for those who are listening via the telephone. You must register to speak through the dial-in participant hotline that I described a moment ago. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes of testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials are accorded the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to, in time. If consecutive translation services are being used, the time will be extended to 5 minutes. And if an applicant team with 3 or more speakers wishes to make a team presentation, the team will generally be allowed a total of 10 minutes. The chair will announce when the time limit is reached. Be mindful of potential background noise during testimony. Make sure that if you're watching the proceedings via live stream, that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony. Otherwise, you'll hear an echo. If you wish to submit written testimony, it should be submitted to the Department of City Planning. The mailing and email addresses can be found on our website, planning.nyc.gov. Lastly, note that this remote public hearing is being recorded.
Excellent. Thank you, as always, Ryan. And again, good morning to all of you, and welcome to today's City Planning Commission public hearing. My name is Dan Gorodnick. I have the privilege of chairing the City Planning Commission. We have a very interesting and varied agenda today, in which we're going to hear from the public on 6 different projects, 3 of them in the Bronx, 2 in Brooklyn, and 1 in Queens. The Queens project is a rezoning that seeks to bring significantly increased resiliency to new and existing homes on the beautiful Rockaway Peninsula. Resiliency is one of the many hot topics that we debate regularly at commission hearings. So please join us, when these topics are on the agenda. We love to have public participation, and you can find information about how to listen and participate always at nycengage.gov. Today is our public hearing day. So just a reminder for those who are tuning in for the first time, we have public review sessions and public hearings every 2 weeks. The review sessions are with the commission and city planning staff, but they are open to the public to watch. The public hearings, like today, are an opportunity for people to speak their mind about the various projects that are under consideration. So today, we will have hearings on a proposal by the city's Human Resources Administration, HRA, which is seeking permission to open new office space near the Bronx County Family Court. Also in the Bronx, we'll hear what the public thinks about the fire department's proposal to move its emergency medical service station 17 to a new and improved site in the neighborhood on Morris Avenue. Heading north in the Bronx to Baychester, we'll have public testimony on an application to change the zoning that would allow for a new private daycare, complete with classrooms, play areas, and offices. In Bushwick, Brooklyn, we have a lease renewal for the Round Table Senior Center, which is planning several improvements, including planters and sidewalk repairs outside. And we'll have a public hearing on an HPD, which is the city's housing agency proposal, in East New York for 4 new buildings that would bring new affordable apartments near schools, parks, and multiple train lines. Finally, we have a hearing on another HPD project, this one in Queens, and it is called Resilient Edgemere. This is a community plan that promises to protect homes from future flooding and create green space for the public near Jamaica Bay on the Rockaway Peninsula, one of New York City's most beautiful and ecologically sensitive destinations. This project at Resilient Edgemere is an example of how future-looking waterfront development can provide affordable housing, public recreational space, and increase our city's overall resiliency. Now, if this rezoning were approved, it would be the city's 5th special risk district after Gerritsen Beach, Broad Channel, Hamilton Beach, and coastal Staten Island. If you want to learn a little bit more about the city's waterfront vision, I would recommend that you dive into our comprehensive waterfront plan, which lays out policy ideas for the next 10 years of New York City's shoreline. Go to waterfrontplan.nyc to learn more. So we look forward to hearing from the public today and at all of our public hearings and continuing our important work of getting stuff done for New Yorkers. First, though, we're going to go through the approval of the meeting minutes, scheduling for future hearings, and a series of votes. So let me turn to Sarah Avila to get us started this morning as the secretary. So Sarah, take it away.
Good morning. This is the City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal. Today is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. I will now call the roll. Chair Garodnick.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Burney.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Duick.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Goodridge.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Here.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, March 16th, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. On the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes of March 16, 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, minutes are approved. Thank you.
Scheduling, calendar numbers 1 through 5. We have resolutions for adoption, scheduling Wednesday, April 13th, 2022 for a remote public hearing to be held through the NYC Engage portal.
Thank you. On those resolutions, I will make a motion to approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 10. Reports, Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 6 and 7, PS 005 Richmond Huguenot expansion, CD3, calendar number 6, N220281 RAR, calendar number 7, N220282 RCR, in the matter of applications for the grant of an authorization and a certification concerning PS 005 Richmond Huguenot expansion. For adoption on calendar numbers 6 and 7, Chair Garodnick.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Duick,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 6 and 7 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 8, 9, and 10. CD3, calendar number 8, N220020, RCR 350 Edgegrove Avenue. Calendar number 9, N210158, RCR 48 Polian Avenue. Calendar number 10, N220085, RCR 63 Holcomb Avenue and 64 Canton Avenue. In the matter of applications for the grant of certifications for adoption on calendar numbers 8, 9, and 10. Chair Garodnick,
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles,
Yes.
Commissioner Burney,
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo,
Yes.
Commissioner Duick,
Yes.
Commissioner Edie,
Yes.
Commissioner Goodridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Marin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 8, 9, and 10 have been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 13.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, we ask those who are testifying to limit the remarks to 3 minutes, after which time either I will remind you or you will be muted automatically. So I'm going to ask Ryan, do you have any final reminders here for people before we go forward?
Sure. Just reminding everyone if they'd like to speak via the online or by phone, they must first have registered. If you missed the instructions at the beginning of the meeting, you can go to nyc.gov/NYC engage for instructions on how to register to testify via the online live stream or the phone. And that is also now posted here on the screen.
Great. Thank you. And I'm going to now ask the calendar officer to call the first item.
Borough of the Bronx, calendar number 11, HRA office space, 810 River Avenue, CD4, N220168 PXX, public hearing in the matter of an application for a notice of intent to acquire office space concerning HRA office space, 810 River Avenue.
Excellent. Thank you. We're joined today by the applicant team, which includes Rizwana Sheikh, Rushdi Patel, and Irene Macedon from the New York City Human Resources Administration and DCAS. Ms. Macedon is from DCAS. And I will ask them to proceed for 3 minutes as soon as they're ready. So welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rizwana Sheikh, Acting First Assistant Deputy Commissioner in charge of facilities for New York City Human Resources Administration. Next slide, please. The project area is located at 810 River Avenue at the corner of East 158th Street and River Avenue in the Concourse area in the Bronx, relatively close to Yankee Stadium. We considered 2 other sites in the vicinity represented by yellow dots, 220 East 161st Street and 180 East 156th Streets. However, this location was deemed to be the best fit for our needs as it offers optimal space configuration and is in close proximity to the Bronx Family Court. The entrance to the proposed location is on River Avenue, and it is approximately a 9-minute walk to Bronx Family Court. This is ideal as HRA staff need to be close to attend hearings. Additionally, the proposed office is located within a 17-story mixed-use structure of which HRA proposes to occupy a portion of the 2nd floor. Next slide, please. This location is easily accessible. It is close to 161st Street, Yankee Stadium, on subway lines B, D, and 4. Next slide, please. It's also accessible by numerous local and express buses. Next slide, please. The proposed second floor office is accessible from the street entrance on River Avenue, leading to a shared commercial lobby equipped with an elevator and open stair. Next slide, please. The second floor is a multi-tenanted, of which HRA proposes to occupy 5,000 square feet, accommodating a total of 20 staff to create the Bronx Borough Office. This is a joint HRA office, which will include Office of Child Support Services and Office of Legal Affairs. The HRA entrance and waiting area with the single occupancy client restrooms are depicted in purple on the bottom right-hand corner. The area in pink indicates staff and client interview areas. And lastly, the area in green represents staff-only areas consisting of print copy rooms, storage rooms, LAN room, restrooms, wellness room, and pantry. In conclusion, this new office space is essential to comply with the 2018 court mandate, which will facilitate a more efficient movement of high-volume cases containing documents compiled from the DSS systems and paper records obtained directly from public assistance clients. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. One question for me. How many client visitors do you expect to see every day in your new space here?
Usually the clients are by appointment, and we anticipate 5 on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if members of the commission have questions. Mr. Vice Chairman, Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Sheikh. I just wanted to clarify, is this a relocation of a pre-existing office function, or is this a new office function, pursuant to the 2018 policy that you just mentioned?
In 2018, when we were mandated to have a joint function, we consolidated and comprised all of our functions at 900 Sheridan Avenue, which is where the court space is located. And we were in the lower main level, tends to be the basement area, and we were very constricted and confined. We determined that we had very poor internet connection, and then COVID happened. A lot of our hearings concluded to happen virtually, and we determined that we weren't able to conduct these meetings virtually because of the poor connection. Right now, our staff are working from home. We did create an intermediary office at 305 Ryder. However, that is 20 minutes away on a bus line. So although we accommodated ourselves at 900 Sheridan, it wasn't ideal. And so now we're looking for a more permanent location.
I see. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. My only question, if you've answered this question, please forgive me. The length of the lease is how long, and what are the renewables, please?
Hello, this is Irene Macedon with DCAS Leasing. I can answer this question. The lease term is approximately 20 years, and we have 2 consecutive renewal options for a period of 5 years each at 95% fair market value.
Once the 20 years are up, you're saying, correct?
Correct. We can elect
Thank
to
you.
renew for 2 consecutive periods of 5 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do not see any other hands raised, nor do I see members of the public wishing to testify on this matter. With that, we thank you for joining us today, and we will move to the next item on our agenda. Madam Secretary, the hearing is closed on the first.
Borough of the Bronx, calendar numbers 12 and 13, EMS Station 17, CD4, Calendar number 12, C210293PSX. Calendar number 13, C210294ZSX. Public hearing in the matter of applications for a site selection and special permit concerning EMS Station 17.
Oops. Madam Secretary, we may have lost you there for a moment.
Oh, apologies. I'll recall the item. Borough of the Bronx, calendar numbers 12 and 13, EMS Station 17, CD4, calendar number 12, C210293PSX. Calendar number 13, C210294ZSX, public hearing in the matter of an application for site selection and special permit concerning EMS Station 17.
Okay. The last couple of words there that we missed were EMS Station 17. And thank you, Madam Secretary. We have today with us David Harney of the Fire Department and Chris Grove of DCAS here to present. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time this morning and congratulations on your appointment. My name is David Harney and I'm the Chief of Staff to the Deputy Fire Commissioner. The application before you this morning is for site selection and special permit to relocate EMS Station 17 from its current quarters at 1080 Ogden Avenue in Bronx Community Board 4 to 1257 Morris Avenue, also in Bronx Community Board 4. Next slide, please. EMS Station 17, as I noted, is currently located at 1080 Ogden Avenue, Community Board 4. The building is the former quarters of Engine 68. The company was housed here until a new firehouse was built, along with Ladder 49, in 1979. For approximately 20 years, the building was used by our building maintenance division as a storage facility. But in 1997, after the FDNY EMS merger, the building was renovated to become EMS Station 17. But this building is probably over a century old, and this 3-story wood frame structure is the only building of its type remaining in the agency's inventory. Next slide, please. In 2018, the agency performed a structural review of the building. Here we conclude the facility exceeded its useful life. Especially there are cracks and open joints in the doors of the threshold. Rainwater and melting snow have entered the building's structural systems, and it's been further exacerbated by vehicle decontamination work. To that end, and over the past few years, the agency has conducted a variety of remedial efforts to slow down the building's deterioration as plans were developed to replace this important facility. Next slide, please. With funding support from the City Hall to replace this facility in 2019, the agency selected the vacant parcel at 1257 Morris Avenue for the new site. Located within Bronx Community Board 4, which is under the agency's jurisdiction, the lot measures approximately 15,000 square feet and is adjacent to the quarters of Engine 92, Ladder 44. Here, the agency, working with DDC, plans to build a 2-story, approximately 11,000 square foot facility with below-grade park for station staff to serve as a new home for Station 17. Next slide, please. Well, this project was slowed by COVID-19. Last December, the City Planning Commission certified our land use action for this project. The proposed facility will have interior parking for 6 ambulances, 1 additional bay for vehicle decontamination. Other areas in the proposed main floor include officers' offices for the on-duty lieutenant, storage for vehicle supplies, oxygen, advanced and basic life support ambulances, medical equipment, an elevator, a ready room, eye wash, decontamination, ADA compliant restroom. Next slide, please. The proposed facility's second floor has an office for the station's captain, male and female locker rooms, bathrooms, a stress reduction room, which is a gym, training area, outdoor terrace, a lactation room for EMS members who are also nursing mothers, space for security and telecommunications equipment, several storage areas, the building's mechanical systems, elevator controls, and custodial closets. Finally, the proposed building cellar will have off-street parking for 21 personal vehicles and a bicycle rack, so there is no impact on-street parking. Meanwhile, the members of 92 and 44 will still have off-street parking on the remaining portion of the lot. Next slide, please. As you see, DDC has designed a beautiful building with lots of natural light. Next slide, please. EMS station not allowed as of right in R7-1 zoning district, so a request for a special permit is being made for the proposed project. Meanwhile, the proposed EMS station will comply with all applicable bulk, height, and setback restrictions, as well as parking requirements in an R7-1 district. To surmise, the fire department believes this proposed new facility is important because it will enhance the agency's EMS capabilities within Bronx Community Board 4, eliminate traffic and parking issues along Ogden Avenue, provide our EMS staff with the state-of-the-art facility while moving them out of an old structurally failing building, not impact traffic and parking along Morris Avenue after it is built. As such, the fire department respectfully requests the Planning Commission support this action so we may improve the agency's emergency medical response capabilities in this area. Next slide, please. And with that, I will take anyone's question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harney. We appreciate it. And
forgive me for going along.
That's okay. You didn't. You were almost perfect. One question. Forgive me if you said this, but the current location that is being used is being proposed. What's the future of that site?
Well, right now, the fire department must use this facility for the next several years until the proposed project, if approved, is built. Once it is proposed new facility is built, the fire department will relocate to the new site on Morris Avenue, and then surrender jurisdiction of the property to the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. And plans are, as of today, to transfer jurisdiction of this building as part of the borough-based jail system project for a community center.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Harney. Good to see you. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Really? It's really great to see. I know you guys have been working slowly on moving the EMS into these new facilities. That they've been the sort of neglected branch for a long time. So I'm very happy to see this project. And I'm just wondering, where are you in that process now? How many of the EMS facilities now have adequate facilities, and how many do you still have to go?
Well, Commissioner, with all due respect, I would disagree. When I joined the fire department 25 years ago, there were only 16 facilities citywide for EMS.
Right.
Today there are 40.
That's great.
And naturally projects are slow due to budgetary conditions.
Mm-hmm.
The options on available property. But right now, the agency is in the process of completing work for new EMS Station 49 in Astoria. We have this project going on. We're looking at other areas of the city for EMS expansion. So we continue to go forward. But again, everything is, as you well know,
mm-hmm.
is wrapped up in land use review, working with our colleagues at DCAS and DDC to move these forward. So, but we have done a tremendous amount of work in the 25 years that EMS has been part of the fire department. Call volume has gone up dramatically. It's gone up on average by about 700 calls per day since I joined the agency. We're averaging now about 4,200 calls a day. We're running probably about 700 tours a day. So we also have plans in the works to replace EMS Station 7, and we'll be coming to the commission within the next several months with a land use action for that project as well. So we continue to push the issue forward every day, and we're working as hard as we can to expand the number of EMS stations citywide to support emergency operations.
Good. Well, I thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing more of these kinds as they come along.
And I look forward to seeing you more too.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Let's see if there are any further questions from the commission. I see none. So, and I also see no members of the public wishing to testify on this item. So, Mr. Harney, thank you very much for your testimony here today. We appreciate it. And we're going to close the hearing on this item, and I will ask the secretary to call our next.
Thank you, Commissioner, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Borough of the Bronx, calendar numbers 14 and 15. 1930 Adi Avenue rezoning, CD12, calendar number 14, C210391 ZMX, calendar number 15, N210392 ZRX, public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 1930 Adi Avenue rezoning.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Let me note that we're going to hear from the applicant, and I believe Richard Lavelle will be speaking. The applicant team includes Michael Gilbert, Ron Gilbert, Sebastian De Alessandro, Ada, Clark Ramsey, and Kevin Williams. Mr. Lavelle, when you are ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, good morning. Richard Lavelle of Sheldon Lavelle PC. Pleased to present the 1930 80 Avenue rezoning. Next slide, please. So the building at the site received a certificate of occupancy back in 1963 as a metal manufacturing institution. And at the time, it occupied the western portion of the site. In 1987, materials were filed with the Department of Buildings to expand that building, but between 1987 and 1995, the building was expanded without the benefit of the approved permits, and in 1995, a violation was issued by DOB. So the building right now is too large for the site, is built outside the parameters of the existing R4 zoning. In 2017, the applicants obtained the site with the intention to convert that to daycare. Next slide. So what would be done here would be a rezoning from R4 to R6B. This would be for the existing site, as well as for the 3 adjacent residential sites, which we will discuss momentarily. In addition, MIH options 1 and 2 would be met. Next slide. So what would be resulting from this? Your existing building is built to a 2 FAR. The site is roughly 7,000 square feet. The building would be roughly 14,000 square feet. Again, an existing building, but this would allow for the renovation and legalization of this existing building. Interestingly, the 2 FAR of this building is permitted within the existing R4, but the lots, front yards and side yards are non-compliant, as well as a small portion of the rear for lot coverage. So there's a portion of the ceiling in the rear that would be reduced by 2 feet in height, and that would cause, with the rezoning, the entirety of the building to be complying. This is all in favor of the opportunity for St. Gemuel, which is a beloved local daycare institution, to be able to locate at the site. They've served members of the community for close to 20 years, and have recently, as of last week, received New York City DOE approval to operate at this site. So this would allow them to operate here with the modifications as proposed. Next slide. So the zoning map, you can see there's a vast R6 to the east. This district itself is R4. I think if you want to forward to 2 slides in the remaining 50 seconds, we can talk about why this rezoning is merited here. And so you've got 80 Avenue here, which is a wide street at 80 feet wide. We're off the New England Thruway. And so even in and of itself, an R6B would be appropriate here, a slight uptick in density, respecting the fact that we are next to a major thoroughfare and along an 80-foot wide street. The site itself has great street access, being a corner lot. In addition, the 3 residential buildings to the east of us, all of those are non-complying with FARs of greater than 1 up to 1.63. So this would make them less non-complying. In my last 14 seconds, if you want to go to slide 12, there is merely a plan which shows, next slide, there it is, the portion, the 2-story portion, which we would be reduced by 2 feet in order to cause this to be legal and complying under the R6B. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. You did that fast. I had a lot to cover. Let me just pose a couple of quick questions here. The building of interest that you hope to allow for St. Gemuel daycare to come in, what is currently happening in that building? I know it's overbuilt, non-compliant, all of those things. What is actually happening in that building today?
So it's currently vacant. There was a house of worship that was operating at the site prior to vacancy here. But you know, one of the reasons I think it's a meritorious rezoning is because the underlying 2 FAR for community facility is the same in the existing R4 and the R6B. This basically was an opportunity for us to allow for these more generous yard requirements to legalize this building with a minimal amount of work. And I would add, Chair, that the approval which came through, the conditional approval from the Department of Education, provides for funding for St. Gemuel for the 2022 to 2023 school year. So the community board, the Bronx Borough president, everyone was very excited about the opportunity to provide this type of quality daycare instruction at this site.
Great. And on the R6B, you're including this site, I know, mostly for compliance and yard requirement purposes, but you also are including 3 additional sites, which, as you described, by changing the zoning, would make them less non-compliant. So can you just say a little bit more about that, and also about R6B in this context? We understand, based on what you're saying here, there's a fair amount of certainty on the daycare with DOE approval and funding associated with it, that's what we're going to see here. But, you know, we also have to think about the bigger picture as to what might be in the future and also what might be on the sites next door. So can you talk a little bit about the sites, the surrounding zoning, and the appropriateness of R6B just a little bit more? You by necessity went through it quickly. If you could just spend another minute or two, we would appreciate it.
Of course. So we think that an R6B rezoning here, regardless of the community facility proposed, would meet the standards that would be required for providing a land use rationale. For a property like this and for a street frontage like this with an 80-foot wide street with good access, the moderate increase in density that would be proposed would really be merited on this site as well as on the residential sites to the east. And importantly, so you've got our site and the 3 adjacent sites. Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental is on the call with us. It's probably not necessary to call him, but he can be called. But those sites would not even be considered soft sites. They are existing 3-story residential buildings in fine shape. Again, from floor area ratios of 1.09 up to a 1.63. The existing R4 would permit those at a 0.75 with an additional 20% for an attic bonus. So these are built well over existing R5 regulations. So the street frontage here, the access to the site, the fact that not even only, Chair, if you look at our side of the street, even across the street, 2 of the 3 lots are occupied by buildings which are non-complying and built over the permitted FAR. So, you know, I think just as, you know, you really have a nice rationale for this frontage being next to the throughway to allow for this slight increase in density. And also, you know, for what it's worth, an R6B is the minimum zoning district, which would carry with it a requirement of mandatory inclusionary housing. So in the future, if any of the sites were redeveloped, they would carry that requirement, which is an important goal of the city.
Thank you very much. Turning to my colleagues. Commissioner Rampersad.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I had a question. I was looking at the community board recommendation and they're talking about a restrictive deck to be filed on the property. And looking at the DOB system, the last alteration that was filed, it was back in 2019. So if this goes through, you're going to file a new alteration, 1, to get a new CO. And part of that, you're going to put the restrictive deck on the new C of O.
So I think there's a couple of things to note. There would be alteration filings at DOB, and Sebastian D'Alessandro is on the call and is able to address those. But importantly, with regards to the restricted declaration, we feel that the application merits a rezoning without the restricted declaration. We also understand the reality, which is that the community board and the borough president were interested in not permitting a larger building here, a taller building here. So although we would not seek it out, to the extent that we are presented with a requirement, so to speak, that a restrictive declaration be entered, we will be willing to do so, and you know, which would be recorded against the property and likely recorded on the certificate of occupancy. I would note that Bronx Community Board 12, with whom we've worked in the past before successfully on many of these projects, was very gracious in their consideration of this, recognized the good works that St. Gemuel does. And so in that regard, if prior to council vote, we are requested to do so, we would enter into that restricted declaration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burney.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick question. There had been some discussion at the review session about the facade of the building and perhaps some options for making it look a bit more appealing as a daycare center and a bit more inviting. And I wondered if there had been any more thought about that.
Sure. So Ron and Michael, actually, the applicants have experience in producing and building daycare centers. I don't know whether or not we're able to recall the slides. The last slide that's included demonstrates 2 of their prior projects, which are both daycare centers. And Commissioner Burney, we did want to just, to the extent those can be put up. If not, I can describe them. Oh, there we go. Still the last slide in the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So one in the Bronx and the other in Queens, and essentially the buildings are painted with murals to make them more inviting to the pre-K through pre-K through nursery school children who have attended the site. So they are conscious of, with regards to the appearance of the building, and would make this as inviting as possible. So thank you for the comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Giving the rest of the commission a moment to pose any questions they may have here. Okay, seeing none, and I will note we also do not have members of the public wishing to testify on this item. So thank you for being here with us, and I will close the hearing on this item and move to the next one. Madam Secretary, if you don't mind, please call the next item.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 16, Roundtable Senior Center, CD4, C220212PQK. Public hearing and the matter of an application for acquisition concerning Roundtable Senior Center.
Great, thank you very much. We have joining us today, Leah Krieger from DIFTA, John Koza, who is down in the city of New York, may also be DIFTA. I'm going to let Ms. Krieger define his specific role. And also, we have Sandra Christian. So I'm going to turn to Leah Krieger from DIFTA for 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and thank you, Commissioners. I'm an architect with DIFTA, and John Kosa is the lease negotiator with DCAS, and Sandy Christian is with the sponsor organization Riseboro. And Roundtable Senior Center is located in the Bushwick Avenue section of Bushwick. And please go to the next slide. Roundtable serves 100 meals per day. You can see the breakdown on this slide: 25 congregate breakfast meals, 60 lunch, and 30 dinner meals. And Riseboro Partnership has been serving the Bushwick community for 47 years. Again, John Kosas will be available for any questions regarding the lease negotiation. DCAS is pursuing a 20-year lease. And I'd like to introduce you to Sandy Christian from Riseboro, and please go on to the next slide. Sandy, can you describe the services that Roundtable provides to seniors?
Yes, Roundtable Senior Center provides a multi-purpose senior center. So in addition to the meals, which Leah had mentioned, we do a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. We also have a case assistance program, which provides help with entitlements, benefits, and we do both for members and walk-ins in the community. We also have a number of educational and recreational and health promotion activities, Tai Chi, Zumba. We do classes on computer instruction. We have a music appreciation class, and our health promotion activities provide activities like blood pressure screening, discussions on diabetes, and other topics. We actually have a membership of about 520 clients, and each day they may be different. So somebody might come from Zumba, or then we'll have 362 clients that will be active on a weekly basis. So you can get up to over 100 clients a day, depending on what services happen on those days. And we are the only center open we plan to be open from 9 to 7 now that we're back to in-person activities.
Okay, next slide, please. Sandy, can you talk about these rooms?
Sure. So this top room is our dining room, which is a large dining room. It fits at least 100 to 120 clients for meals. And then we have our computer room, and we have at least 10 slots for computer classes that are offered twice a week, 3 hours each day. And they also do work with laptops and cell phones and help seniors connect socially and at home with those activities. This is our activity room, and it can be many purposes. We have movies here, we have discussion groups, we have advisory board meetings, and also exercise classes in the third floor major room. So
next slide, please.
Hi.
Did we lose the slides? We can pause to get those up.
We'll give you a little extra time here. Don't worry.
Appreciate that. So one of the concerns of the commission has been the street beautification. And so the intention is to provide planters to take down. So the entrance to the senior center is on the left. The entrance to the child care center is on the right. So the intention is to take down the roll gate, to paint the door so that the two front doors match, to provide planters and to repair the sidewalk and to remove graffiti. Next slide, please. And that's our presentation today. We are open for questions.
Great, thank you. Just go back to, you have been, the Roundtable Senior Center has been on this site for how long?
The center has been open for over 40 years. Riseboro took over 16 years ago as the sponsor.
Okay, and the current lease expires when?
The current lease has expired in January of this year, but we're occupying it under the TNH clause until we sign a new lease.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Let me go to Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. Mr. Kosa, you are with DCAS, are you not?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, have you visited this location recently?
No, I did visit it. It probably was 2 years ago, approximately by now.
Well, has anyone from DCAS visited the property recently? What I'd like to get is a personal expression of the current physical condition of the location. Can anybody speak to that?
Can I speak to that, Leah, or do you want to?
Please, Sandy, please speak to that.
Yes. The center, we have a pretty active, involved landlord. So they have currently just done some repairs. We had a leak, which caused some damage, but they have totally replaced the elevator a few years ago. They have painted and are going to be upgrading tiles on the floors. It's in pretty good condition of many of my senior centers. They are one of the most responsive landlords, and things are addressed. The daycare program has now been freshly painted, and that's below us. So the building's in good condition.
And when did you visit the facility?
I'm here today, actually. It's where my office is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I would just say, Chair, in years past, as we have looked at renewals of these facilities, and the upkeep in some of them, given the numbers, have been uneven. We have always sought to get from DCAS personal attestations as to the condition of the properties. So I think going forward, it will enhance the applications if someone can speak to the condition of the properties based on actual visits.
Well, we do have a pretty extensive scope of work that is part of the lease renewal. So we do have a DCAS architect who's been there.
I'm somewhat familiar with these for a whole host of reasons. I'm just saying, when it comes to the hearing and asking for a renewal, I would like to hear testimony from a city person that has visited the facility and can speak to the actual conditions. whether the scope of work has been actually executed and performed satisfactorily. So that's what I'm seeking here.
I think it's a good suggestion, and I guess the question for DCAS is that something that you can do and provide to the commission in this situation? I know that you, Mr. Costa, have not been by this site yourself recently, but is this the sort of thing that you could provide to us between now and our next occasion to gather as a group?
Yeah, we could have an architect go out who's the project manager on this, and I can go out with her and we can give you a report. Is there anything in specific you'd be looking for in the report?
Well, I, for one, would just be looking for whether or not the scope of work that has been prepared for a given site has been executed satisfactorily, and whether or not there are no, as you say, leaks in a given building, whether the elevators are operating properly, that the mechanical systems of the building are functioning properly, and that they are in a condition sufficient for the city to make a determination that they want to lease the facility for another 20 years.
Okay, well, the scope of work would not be completed until the lease is signed, and the landlord may go ahead with some on good faith or not. But when the lease is signed, he would usually, that's when they start working on it. Our project manager, DCAS project manager, would supervise that, and when the work is completed properly, would declare substantial completion. And upon substantial completion, then the rent, goes up to the agreed upon rent. The scope does call for replacement of the HVAC system. I understand it's working, but it's old, so that's going to be replaced. And so, the project manager can certainly go out and take a look at it and give you a report on the existing conditions. But the scope will not have been completed yet.
Commissioner, Mr. Vice Chairman, if I understand you, you want to just make sure that somebody from DCAS lays eyes on the space, evaluates current conditions, and allows us to know that the people in charge of facilities for the city have laid eyes on it and have assessed it before we vote. If I understand you correctly,
Precisely.
Is that accurate? Yeah.
Precisely.
Okay.
So, Mr. Costa, if you would do that, we would appreciate it, and please come back to us, and we will share it with the commission.
Okay, and I'm sorry. When would you expect that? What's the deadline?
Well, we're not voting on this matter today, but I don't know if it's on the agenda or when it would be scheduled for a vote. We can come back to you on that, but the soonest that would be would be.
All right. We'll get it done quickly.
If you come back, we will have a review session in a couple of weeks, two weeks from now, Monday. So that would be what I would suggest for you, if you can make that happen.
Certainly. Okay.
So excellent.
Thank
Okay,
you.
terrific. Well, thank you. Let me see if there are other questions here. Commissioner Burney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add to the architect's thinking about this to see what more can't be done about the facade. It's a pretty hodgepodge at the moment, and I think one thing worth looking at would be the signage. The signage for both the daycare and the senior center is, this could be a lot better. It could be more visible, more appealing. There's a lot of stuff. It's hard to tell from the one image we have, and I haven't been to the facility myself, but to the left of the door of the senior center, there seem to be a bunch of sort of ad hoc signs as well. And then the two windows, both in the senior center and in the daycare, they're quite small and quite high, and they're covered in this rather hostile mesh. And I don't know whether that's because the neighborhood is dangerous and they have to do that, but I wonder whether that might not be under review as well.
The windows themselves in the senior center will be replaced, and so that mesh will be removed.
Oh, good. That's great. That'll just make it a little bit less hostile looking, so it'll be nice.
It There hasn't been discussion yet about signage, but we can certainly have that discussion and get back to you before the review session 2 weeks from next Monday.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. And just to be clear, it's 2 weeks from this past Monday. So it's April 11 is the date when we will be back together as a group for an update. So I would, if possible, that would be what I would recommend for returning back to us. Great. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Other questions, comments from the commission? Okay. Seeing none and seeing no other members of the public wishing to testify, well, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to the follow-ups, and we'll close the hearing on this item today, and I will ask the secretary to move us along.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 17, Sutter Place NCP, CD5, C220159HKK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property concerning Sutter Place NCP.
Great. Thank you very much. We have an applicant team for this proposal, and I'm going to share with you their names. Meredith McNair, Sushma Pramod, Nick Simmons, Ismene Spiliotis, Sheen Dow Glasgow, Paris Strotter, and they make up the applicant team with 10 minutes. And I apologize if I did damage to any of your names. Feel free to correct me. And whenever you are ready, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sushma Pramod, and I'm a senior planner at the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and I'm here to present the Sutter Place NCP Development Project. I'm joined today by Paris Trotter, Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Pre-Development, and Ryan Morrows, the Senior Project Manager at HPD, and members of the development team who you've introduced and will introduce themselves again later. Next slide, please. We're here today to present the Sutter Place ULURP application, which will facilitate the development of 4 new construction buildings with approximately 46 affordable rental units and approximately 1,783 square feet of commercial space at one of the buildings. All the units will be affordable to very low income and low income families and individuals, with monthly rents as low as approximately $506 for a 1-bedroom unit. The project is being developed as a joint venture between the Mutual Housing Association of New York, or MANI, and the Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, CHLDC, under HPD's Neighborhood Construction Program, or NCP. The ULURP application was certified on December 13th, 2021, and is seeking approvals for Urban Development Action Area designation and project approval, and for the disposition of city-owned land. Next slide, please. Now I'll hand it over to the development team.
Hi, my name is Meredith McNair. I'm the community planner at Cypress Hills LDC, and we are very proud to be partnering with Manny Management on this project. CHLDC itself is a 38-year-old nonprofit that has been serving Cypress Hills and East New York for these past decades, both as a community development organization and a settlement house with a wide range of services serving all ages in the neighborhood. And Manny is similarly rooted in this neighborhood for, again, almost 4 decades, and has a long track record of affordable development, and also is a home buyer and foreclosure prevention counselor. Next slide, please. This map shows the 4 development sites, 492 Glenmore, 2358 Pitkin, 943 Dumont, and 743 Blake. You can see they're all within a few blocks from each other and pretty close to the Van Sicklen Avenue C station. And these are actually split between the 2 council districts, 37 and 42, with 2 sites in each district. Next slide, please.
Hello, my name is Chin Dow Glasgow, representing RKTV Architects and Project Architecture. I'll be doing the buildings. This is site 1, which is 492, 496 Glenmore, 5,000 square foot lot, mid-block with a low density zoning of R5B. Next slide, please. So to be concise here, all sites have back lots or backyards that are accessible by all the tenants of the building with landscaped areas, hard areas, and raised planters. This building has 6 units, 2 and 3 bedrooms, and it's a walk-up building. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site plan showing the rear area with planters, paving, trees, and raised beds. You can see the sort of typical layout of the units. The front is set back, affords some privacy and planters, and then you have large living room, kitchens, and bedrooms, and all of the units, except for the large building, have in-unit laundry. Next slide, please. Here we have the next site, which is 2358 Pitkin Avenue, combination of 3 vacant lots. It has it's in the upzone East New York area with the R7A zoning and a C2-4 overlay. Next slide, please. So this is along the busy Pitkin corridor. It has ground floor retail space, which will likely be divided into 2 retail spaces. It has the residential entry on the left. It is a 8-story building with with all 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. This one has a shared laundry on the roof with a outdoor deck on the setback of the building there that is open to the public and sort of an amenity to the laundry room. Is an elevator building with 26 units. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site plan with the shared space in the rear, the front, and then you can also see the setbacks happening at the upper floor. Next slide, please. The ground floor also has a common recreation room, which acts as both access to the rear yard and just common space. You can see the retail space on the left of the ground floor plan here. Then you can see a typical floor plan. All of these units were requested to be larger by the community board, and we've essentially maxed them out to HPD's maximums for unit sizes, and in some cases exceeded those where we have in-unit laundries. Next slide, please. This is the next site. This is a 5,400 square foot lot in a very low R5 zoning district. This is the one we're asking for an override, and I'll address that really quick here. We're essentially asking, there's 2 setbacks required on a lot like this, as we are not providing parking, as it is an income restricted housing unit building. The setbacks generally are defined somewhat for parking. Next slide, please. So here you can see the building. There is 1 setback along the more residential street, but we are not setting back on the more commercial street. And you can see in the slide below, the slide to the left of the street view, that most of the buildings here do actually push up to their property line, and this would not be inappropriate for the existing context of the building. The building itself has 3 units. We maximized, 3 bedroom units, 6 total with a center walk upstairs, and we maximized what we could fit on the site with unit sizes. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site plan. So on the site plan, you can see to the left here, the facade is set back. We raised it up, the building 2 feet with a ramp and stairs so that we can get some privacy to the ground floor unit that's at the corner. And then the building has, one of the reasons we need this setback is that, or we need the building not set back, is because the lot is 90 feet deep. And we do need a 30-foot legal light and air at this side yard here in order to provide legal light and air for the bedrooms of this unit, which you can see at the top of the typical floor plan, where the living room is in the corner and then the bedrooms are on the side there. And then in the middle here, you can see the walk-up stair with open glass to the street to act as a semi-private but safe space. Next slide, please. Here you can see the last site, which is 4,000 square foot. It has a slightly higher zoning at R6. Another corner lot. Next slide, please. And here you can see the building itself. It has a setback along the right-hand side there. And it has a similar open stair in the center with a circulation. There are four 3-bedroom units on each side, going to a total of 8. And again, with a landscape yard. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site plan. We don't have any problems with setbacks in this site because it is a 100-foot typical New York City lot. So we're able to obtain the 10-foot setback on the bottom there, which aligns it with the existing building on the right, and then still able to get a 30-foot legal light and air yard for the units. And with that, I turn it over to the team.
Good morning. I have 10 seconds to tell you that the project is a 100% affordable 46-unit development, and what you see here is actually a realignment of the unit incomes in response to the council people, both Councilwoman Nurse and Councilman Barron, the community board, and the borough president. So we actually worked with HPD to bring the affordability down. And so you'll see here that of the 46 units, we still have some, as there are people in East New York, at the 60 to 80% AMI. But we actually pushed down, and over 70% of the apartments are available at AMI levels, affordable to residents currently in East New York. I think next slide, the rents reflect that 30% of income by those percentages. The next slide summarizes our ask. Next slide, please. And I don't know, Nick, if you want to quickly give a couple of words. Sure. Okay, well, we can answer questions about the schedule if anyone has it. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. It's time is up, but we'll see if there are questions on the schedule. And good to see you. Let me just pose one question. I'm sure there'll be questions from the commission on the 943 Dumont Avenue setback question. I understand that there's an effort to waive one of the 2 required front yards to maximize the ability to build on the site. But Mr. Glasgow, I just did not understand that. It may just have been quick. So if you wouldn't mind, can you explain the rationale for the need for the mayoral override for a waiver here, and just take another moment on that?
Sure. Yeah. All right. So yeah, the lot is a slightly irregular lot in the fact that it's got a 100-foot width. So if we were to set back the building, we did maximize. So it's not really about maximizing the FAR or the amount that we can build on it, because that wouldn't change, and we're not really asking for a variance on that. What we're asking for is that in order to provide legal light and air to those units on the side yard, it's better to forego the 10-foot setback along that busy street, which doesn't, most of the buildings don't apply to that setback anyways, that we provide the 30-foot side yard so that there will be light and air. If we didn't do that, if we tried to redesign it earlier, what happens is you get a building that doesn't really work because you just don't have the frontage to provide light and air to legal light and air to bedrooms and living rooms, which is required. We could, for instance, theoretically do the setback, but then we would only have a 20-foot yard, which would be a violation of zoning.
Chindow, maybe you can just help. I don't know, Chairperson Gorodnik, if that makes sense. Chindow, this is on Dumont, right? The entrance. So you're not setting back on Dumont. You're staying all the way to, and also it's also that we're trying to conform with all the other buildings on the street. I mean, I think that's really important. We have to pick a spot, and we really don't want to be sunken in, not only because it doesn't work and we would have issues with side yard or rear yard requirements, but we're really trying to maintain the street front. So we would be kind of balancing, aren't we, all of our buildings, we try to stay in context of the neighboring buildings, and this would be in line with that. Is that not correct?
Correct. Like if you could go back to the aerial view or the site plan, I could show you that, for instance, the building.
Let's see if we can pull that up. Yeah. We'll ask our team to bring the presentation back up and.
Yeah, it would be page 14.
Page 14? Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, here we are.
Right. So if you look at the, actually go one more, please, before that. One more past that. The aerial view is the one where you can see. Okay, here you can see along Dumont, as Ismenia was explaining, the buildings are not set back there on the Dumont Avenue, right? So that's really more conforming with what's happening with the rest of the buildings, because Dumont is it's more of the avenue, and Ashford is more of the residential street. Like you have retail along Dumont and that kind of thing. So it really is not out of character with the context.
Great. Okay, and then the setback is where? So looking at this, the setback is on which side?
So we're going to have a 10-foot setback on Ashford Street to match up with these residential townhouses, but we will not have a setback on Dumont Avenue where the apartment buildings are.
And so Chindow, by setting back 10 feet on Ashford, now we create a street front on Ashford, correct? Right. Okay, so I think that the whole point here is that we wanted, I don't like it, again, you guys are all the planners, but, we wanted to maintain the street face. And so on Ashford will be aligned with the other buildings currently on Ashford, and on Dumont will be aligned with the current buildings on Dumont.
Okay, I got it.
By doing it this way.
You keep a consistent street front on both Ashford and Dumont, and you comply with legal light and air requirements at the same time. I got it. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. Okay. Let me see what other questions there are here, if any. And while I ask this of the commission, I will just confirm with the applicant team that Ryan Moros is part of the applicant team. We have him signed up here just in a slightly different way. Okay, all right.
Yes,
great.
He's from HPD.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to confirm. Okay, now I've got questions from first Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you, y'all. It's great to see you chipping away at these smaller sites, which I realize are a particular challenge to develop, and I especially appreciate the daylit stairways on sites 3 and 4. That's always a nice thing to see. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how these are going to be managed. I know you've got lots of other properties in the neighborhood, but when you have units scattered all over the place, management is sometimes a challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about your management approach?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Levin. It's Ismini. And so Manny Management will be co-owner with Cypress Hills, and we self-manage. And I think we cut out the slides from the presentation here showing where our buildings, we own over 700 units of housing in and around these sites. And so that's actually why we applied for this project in the first place, because we could just add them to our portfolio. So Manny's portfolio happens to be a scattered site. We have 200 like small buildings, all less than 10 units, many of which are actually in East New York and in CB5. And so what we have is a system, and none of the units will actually have a resident superintendent. So what we have is a system of roving handymen and roving porters. And so what happens is they're assigned geographically to a set of buildings. And then as we add buildings to here, we actually have, we own 6 buildings on Dumont, right at, in the 900s, just a block away. So those, and we have a couple on Cleveland and we have a couple on Ashford. So what happens there is that the handyman and super and porter assigned to those buildings will get these added on. They'll probably get a few buildings taken away because there's kind of like a magic number that's like the right number for cleaning and garbage and maintenance. And so we have this team that approaches the maintenance and repairs on the project, which is a roving team.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about the tenant selection side of things? How you ensure that these are, fully tenanted by income eligible people?
Yes, so Manny also is a housing ambassador, an HPD housing ambassador, and so one of the ways that we can ensure that it will be housed, with appropriate and really speaks to the preferences that HPD set. So this buildings will have a 50% neighborhood preference and a 5% mobility and 2% visual hearing impaired. So we will be advertising all of the available apartments through HPD's housing lottery and go through that process to make sure that the community board preferences and the disability set-asides are filled first, and then go back to the general population, which I think, given how we are marketing a project right now, we actually expect that more than the minimum 50% will go to East New York residents because of the amount of outreach we do, Cypress Hills and Manny does, with the council people and others in the neighborhood. So we will be very sure to make sure the neighborhood benefits, and the income levels were a really big deal about making that happen. And that's where we really went back and sharpened our pencils.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Rampershad.
Thank you for the presentation. Just have a couple of quick questions. On site 1, I noticed on Glenmore, you have lot line windows, which I know they're not count towards light in there, and that I know you're allowed to have certain percentage openings. That's fine. I was just curious, on site 3, you don't show windows along that other side yard. I was just curious for that design. Why not include it since you did it already on site 1?
So site 3, yeah. So that is a small side yard, and it just backs up to a sort of modern church that's on the adjacent lot that has a setback as well. So we couldn't really see like an added benefit of putting windows there. I suppose we could, but yeah, I was
just curious.
Yeah.
That's all. The other question I have is, are you gonna? I know on the renderings they show security bars along the ground floor of all 4 of these sites, or actually 3 out of the 4 sites. Is that something that you're still going to be doing?
Yeah, we typically do that. They can be removed, but we just as a precaution, we do it. I don't know that these neighborhoods are particularly dangerous or anything, but we just kind of do it when, some of these they're pretty easy to access. So we just do that for a safety measure.
Okay. And the last comment or question is, moving forward, the timeline of these projects, when do you expect to have them? Do you have a contractor selected? And what's the timeline of construction and completion?
My name is Nick.
Nick, you're breaking up.
Yeah.
discussing the project in
Nick, you're breaking up. We can't hear. Nick, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear Nick, so we should probably mute Nick and see if somebody else can answer.
Yeah, I can answer for us. Sorry, Nick. Can somebody mute? Yeah.
Sorry, Nick.
Sorry, Nick. I'm always talking for him. I don't know how to mute him. Nick.
Okay, we'll find a way.
Okay. Commissioner Rumpershot, I wanted to also tell you, if you look at the site plans for the buildings, the bedrooms are actually up against that wall. And so I think what you'll see is that the living rooms have huge amount of windows, and then the bedrooms are the ones up against that wall without the window. So I think we don't really lose too much by not putting them in. I mean, something we can consider if you want us to. On the timeline, we are actually really appreciative for the audience, and we're marching along in our ULURP process. We really hope to apply to HPD's 9% tax credits award process this summer, and we anticipate closing on this project before the end of the year. So we've been at this for several years, and I think this might be our year. So we're really aiming to get this to the closing table and into construction at the beginning of 23.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Burney.
Thank you, Chair. I just have it's a minor comment, but I think it's important, which is that I notice on both Dumont and Blake that you have outside the building pretty extensive use of these grass planting strips. And I don't know if you have a landscape architect on the project, but these grass strips, I mean, they're fine for the first 10 minutes, and then they're just mud patches. They're very difficult to maintain. And I do think you should rethink. I noticed actually on what was it now? I think on Blake, it appears in the rendering, but it doesn't appear on the drawing. So I would just encourage you to rethink how that stuff's going to hold up, particularly the stuff that's on the sidewalk, and how difficult it is to maintain. Some form of hardscape might be preferable.
Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting discussion point, and thank you for asking. A lot of these are lower zoned, and the zoning code actually requires at R5 and below that you have continuous planter strips where you're capable of putting them, whereas like R6 and above, you would have a tree pit. So we already got a comment from the borough president requesting that we do rain gardens in these locations, and we can't actually request those ourselves, but we will be giving him a list of these 4 projects, and we also have another 12 that are home ownership, smaller sites, and we'll lump those together and request rain gardens. But it's a good point, and I'll look into the landscaping, because we cannot remove them, but we could potentially landscape them well, or do guards around them, that kind of thing, to make them so that they're an amenity as opposed to a detraction or unsightly.
Right, and you want to reduce your own maintenance burden as well,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
it's a nice thought in theory, Commissioner, and we've had trouble. Again, like I mentioned, we manage all of these scattered, and they have rear yards and they have front yards, and it's a very good point. We have been successful in finding plants that are quite hardy and don't need a lot of they kind of grow, but they don't require a huge amount of watering or maintenance, and they do better. So we will be thinking about what to put there, especially if it's a requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Okay, well, I don't see further questions from the commission. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see you, the applicant team. With that, I'm going to close the hearing on this item. So we appreciate your time, and we're going to move on to our next item. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Secretary. What's next?
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 18 through 22, Resilient Edgemere, CD 14, calendar number 18, C220232 ZMQ, calendar number 19, N220233 ZRQ, calendar number 20, C220235 PPQ, calendar number 21, C220236 HAQ, calendar number 22, C220237 HUQ. Public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments, UDAP designation, project approval, and disposition of city-owned property, and an amendment to an urban renewal plan concerning Resilient Edgemere. Notice: a remote public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULURP hearing to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have an applicant team for 10 minutes, which includes Kevin Paris, David Velez, Stephen Erdman, Allison Ruddock, Paris Strotter. So welcome to you all. We look forward to your presentation today, and whenever you are ready, you can get started.
Thank you so much, commissioners. Just sound check, folks can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm Paris Strotter. I'm an assistant commissioner, planning and pre-development here at HPD. I'm joined by Kevin Paris, who's the director of Queens and Staten Island planning, Stephen Erdman, who's our director for community land trust initiatives and analytics, David Velez and Allison Ruddock, who are our consultant partners on the project from VHB. So thanks so much to the commission for allowing us to present today. Resilient Edgemere Initiative. This is an initiative that's multi-years now, multiple decades actually. The initiative is an interagency community-based effort to align New York City's climate change, resiliency, investments in Edgemere with a long-term and comprehensive community visioning for the neighborhood. Edgemere is particularly vulnerable to significant climate events such as coastal storms and sea level rise. And actually, can you go to the next slide? I'm sorry. Thank you. So Edgemere is particularly vulnerable to significant climate events such as coastal storms and sea level rise, which has and continues to cause physical and financial distress to this community. The city has a unique opportunity to address these conditions due to its amount of vacant properties in the neighborhood and the presence of an active urban renewal area, which provides additional authorities to the city, and in this case, HPD. So as part of the vision, the long-term vision here, peeling back from the vulnerable edge, particularly at the bay side, and then terracing development towards transit at the other end of the neighborhood. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. The Resilient Edgemere Initiative culminated into a plan in 2017 that identifies a land use framework and sets strategies to create resilient and affordable housing for a range of household incomes and sizes, increase retail and community facility offerings, mitigate future flood risks, increase waterfront open space, and improve the coastal ecology. The plan positions Edgemere into the larger vision of the city to improve the ability of flood-prone neighborhoods to withstand and recover quickly from future storms. This is the goals and strategies from the plans here: protect the neighborhood from flooding, create resilient housing and maintain low density feel, improve streets and transportation, and increase neighborhood amenities. Next slide, please. So in the wake of the, excuse me, I'm sorry. In the wake of devastating effects of Superstorm Sandy, the city has invested into this community and the peninsula as a whole to make it more protected from flood events, as well as more accessible to natural amenities for the folks that live there and visit there. These investments have and will include park improvements at Bayswater Park and Rockaway Community Park, as well as continued sewer and road condition improvements between Beach 49th Street and Beach 59th Street, HBD rehabilitation, reconstruction, and elevation of approximately 109 storm damaged homes from Superstorm Sandy, and the work of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with the support of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice and the Parks Department to protect the peninsula from long-term erosion and reduce coastal storm risk. This also on this map here, you see in addition 2 sites that we've reserved. One at Beach 39th Street, which is reserved for a future public school. And then one on Beach 49th Street, which is reserved for drainage purposes. So those 2 sites are in blue here on this map. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Paris to continue the presentation.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So Edgemere's geography has been a key factor when planning an appropriate strategy for achieving the goals of the community plan. Low-lying Edgemere falls within a high-risk area, and the community exists within the coastal A flood zone. The land use strategy proposed as part of this application seeks to work within this geography while responding to the feedback that has been generated through the community plan. Next slide, please. Thank you. The proposed land use strategy seeks to push future development and density away from the Jamaica Bay to more appropriate locations that are less vulnerable, and these are generally located near public transit. Through this conservative approach, we have identified planning areas and proposed specific actions within each of these areas. Within our most vulnerable areas in Edgemere, we have proposed a set of downzonings that will limit future development. Coupled with these downzonings, as we've heard, we have proposed a new special coastal risk district, which will further limit development in these areas. Additionally, we have identified Rockaway Beach Boulevard as an appropriate location to capture some of this displaced density potential through a modest upzoning that will also be mapped with MIH. Next slide, please. And on the screen right now is just a further breakdown of the actions that we're requesting. These actions are needed to facilitate the goals we've discussed from the plan. More specifically, the downzoning actions will rezone portions of the area's existing R41 and R4 areas into R3A. Portions of the existing R4 will be rezoned to R41, and portions of the existing R4, C81 and R5/C12 will be rezoned to R6A. As mentioned, the proposed special coastal risk district will overlay the new R3A and R41 zones. In addition to these zoning changes, we are also seeking UDAP designation for a select number of sites, city-owned sites, as well as amending the urban renewal plan and proposing disposition authority for all city-owned properties within the area. Next slide, please. So within specifically the urban renewal plan, we are seeking to amend the plan in the following ways: expanding and removing some sites from the plan, updating the land use designation so that they can align with zoning, change some development controls to meet flood resiliency standards, increase the unit cap and extend the plan duration. And as part of amending the plan, all of the urban renewal sites will have their acquisition authority refreshed, and all city-owned parcels and acquisition parcels will receive disposition authority. Next slide, please. So the Resilient Edgemere Initiative is a neighborhood plan with a focus on promoting resiliency within future development. Through the strategy of limiting density in combination with the special district, future exposure to flood risk within the hazard mitigation and limited development areas will be reduced, and the regulations will promote a detached housing typology that can lead to a more resilient design. So the new requirements, such as raising the ground floor above the flood elevation, are easily managed through a detached housing typology, and it is more amenable to flood resilient retrofits and allows for necessary future interventions on the subject property. I'll also add that the city-owned property within the hazard mitigation area is proposed for no development, and it's going to be left for open space programming. Next slide, please. So as we shift development away from the most vulnerable areas, the hazard and the limited development areas, the proposed actions seek to focus this potential near transit. Rockaway Beach Boulevard is better suited for an increase in development that will provide much needed community services and quality retail, as well as provide a continuum of housing opportunities for both current and new residents to the area. The decreased density can achieve a number of overlapping goals, such as providing support needed to spur feasible commercial and community facility uses, increased availability of resilient building stock, and provide a continued source for affordable residential opportunities. Next slide. I'll briefly turn it over to my colleague, Stephen, to talk us through Edgemere CLT.
Thanks, Kevin. So as Kevin mentioned, much of the city-owned land in the area will be, the plan is to transfer it to a community land trust. And so HPD released what we've called the Edgemere CLT RFEI in July. And that is a request to seek partners who will establish the CLT in the neighborhood that would ultimately own up to 8 acres of city-owned land. And this again stems from recommendations that were made in the 2017 Resilient Edgemere Community Plan. And so in accordance with the rezoning, the parcels that are more climate vulnerable will be used by the CLT for open space, publicly accessible open space programming, and parcels that are in an area more suitable for development would be used for affordable homeownership opportunities. And then there's a breakdown of the lots that you can see below.
So thank you for that. Thank you for the ability to present, and we can take any questions from the commission.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to that last slide on the community land trust for a moment. I just want to make sure that I understand. We'll pull that slide back up. So you are right now seeking partners for this. This does not exist yet, and the operator of or manager of this CLT is not yet known. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So as you may know, there are a number of groups organizing as CLTs across the city. They are new groups that are working to build their capacity right now. There is no group that is active in this neighborhood. And so we are, the RFEI put out a request for groups to propose how they would set up a CLT in the area that we could ultimately transfer this land to. So it's, in simple terms, a two-part process, and we're in part one right now where we have to establish the CLT. And then in part two, we would work to transfer the land to the CLT and work on the actual affordable housing development process. As part of that second stage, the CLT would need to partner with a development entity to support the creation of affordable housing.
Right. So the community land trust has two goals. One is for the programming of 55 lots for open space, and the other is 51 lots for 1 and 2 family residential development. So that CLT would be doing both things, correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell us, if you were to think about the biggest and most exciting opportunity presented by 55 lots of open space and what could be done with them? And maybe this is something that you all included in your RFEI. So forgive me, but what could that be when thinking about the joint programming of that number of uses in this neighborhood?
So I think the idea of having a CLT be formed and coordinate the use of that open space is to leave how that space is used really to the imagination of the community, and for the CLT to coordinate the community's desires through its own governance system. And so the RFEI does ask for a general vision of how that space would be used, although it's kept at a pretty high level because the RFEI is meant to focus on the actual establishment of the CLT. But how the land is ultimately used as open space, is something that would be envisioned and planned through like the CLT's community engagement efforts.
But just so that I can picture these individual sites here, they're sort of sprinkled around. They're not all up against one another, although some of them might be. Is there a way to create some level of cohesion across this group of 55 lots? Or I don't even know how one would program them, which is why I'm asking more the general question of, give me the flavor for what might be, in this context.
I'll definitely let my colleagues also step in here, but there's a number of ways that we've seen small parcels throughout the city be programmed, whether it's community gardens or as certain pop-ups. The connections that might be made between disparate open space sites, is something that would certainly rely on work with a community and with neighbors of those sites. And so I think a lot of this is unknown what exactly it will look like, but that is part of why the CLT model is being leaned on here, so that we have a structured way for the community to be engaged in the governance of these sites for the long term.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything to that, or?
I would just support my colleague in saying that those are some of the typical uses that you would see. I think in this community, you do see the community garden use on a number of different other sites. But yeah, it's really understanding what the ultimate CLT vision would be for these sites, and that's where we would be.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just kind of playing off this discussion, I wonder, and I have some, the commission has experience in this, but I sort of back in the day, in its earliest days of sort of the development of the Blue Belt concept, I just wonder if even before the CLT and the idea of putting it out there for all kinds of ideas, have there been any discussions within the interagency wise about how, if at all, a Blue Belt system could help benefit the community in the development of what ideas might be out there that could be brought into play? I ask that recognizing, of course, that the Blue Belt is never going to deal or be able to accommodate sort of a devastating flood situation, but most of these communities that have this, that are vulnerable, also deal with the day-to-day issues regarding flooding. It's not just in the big horrible scenario, but it plagues them even in a typical rainstorm, or it plagues them in a sort of an overly large rainstorm. And there's been no mention of the Blue Belt or the, but you do mention the disposition aspect of this application. And I didn't know if that would ultimately lead to the disposition of property that might be turned over to DEP and parks for this purpose. So I'm just trying to understand if that is in play. Are you just waiting for the CLT to make that recommendation, or has it been discussed and not viewed as being a good enough solution, even on a menu of items?
So I would thank you for that comment. It's very appropriate for this conversation. I would just reiterate what my colleague has already shared about the one site that's been reserved for the future drainage site with DEP, and as well as commenting on the work that's being done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as far as providing protections to this community along the Atlantic shore, both along the Jamaica Bay and along the beachfront to the south of Edgemere. I would say that, that's where the conversations have been as far as advancing those initiatives to provide those protections. But as far as relating the sites going over to the CLT and having those sites be part of any of those initiatives, that has not been part of the more immediate conversations as it relates to the CLT.
Yeah, and just to add to that, thank you, Kevin, and thanks for your question, Commissioner. What makes this a little bit different is our, based on what we know about what the Army Corps has proposed, it wouldn't be a blue belt in the same way as it relates to the kind of ecology and the drainage going out to the bay, because there's going to be that protection feature that they're planning there. That said, you mentioned kind of the issues of what we call daylight flooding, or kind of non-storm event or non-storm surge related flooding that the neighborhood experiences, either because of just typical storms and rainfall. The intention is that these lands can be used for some of that purpose, in terms of being an additional kind of unofficial drainage feature. And our thought is that some of these lands probably end up being either parkland or DEP facilities in some way, but it's kind of early in the process. As part of the Edgemere planning that we were doing, we heard a lot from the community that that they had felt that there were a lot of decisions that the city was making over the years that did not necessarily include the community. So one of the main reasons that we're doing this is that there's so much land that the city owns in this neighborhood. It really does make sense for the neighborhood to have some ownership of that, and we had looked to some other cities across the country that have models similar to this. So the idea is that we're giving back the community the opportunity to kind of figure out what these lands should be and how they should be programmed, and those conversations will be ongoing.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cerullo. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Straughter, did I hear earlier that the CLT model is something that you're looking at to implement citywide across neighborhoods, or did I mishear?
Yeah, this is a kind of a unique circumstance, like this neighborhood. But I'll let Stephen, he's our CLT director, yeah. So I'll let him kind of talk about what we're doing citywide.
Yeah, thanks, Paris. So we are working with a number of CLTs across the city on affordable housing projects. There are a dozen or more groups that are working to set themselves up as CLTs and have been advocating for the CLT model for many years now in the city. Many of those groups have an interest in using land for non-housing purposes. So HPD is not able to support those types of projects, but there are many other CLTs that are working on housing projects. And so we financed our first CLT transaction in recent years with the Cooper Square CLT, which is a long-standing CLT, as many of you know, where we provided a green housing preservation loan and a new Article 11 tax exemption to the CLT to preserve the affordability of over 300 units of housing on that CLT's land. And then in November of 2020, we provided 4 city-owned properties and about $7 million of capital financing and an Article 11 tax exemption to the newly formed East Harlem El Barrio CLT, which will be supporting a 36-unit MHA rental project with those sites. And then much more recently, just about a month ago, we closed on financing and a tax exemption for the Interborough Community Land Trust. We'll be building 16 affordable homeownership opportunities on 13 sites formerly owned by NYCHA in Eastern Queens. And then we have many other CLT projects that we're working on right now. In total, we have about 1,000 units of housing that we either have already financed, as I just mentioned, or are planning to finance that would be located on CLTs across the city. And we're working on expanding that pipeline as well.
Well, thank you. No, fair enough. My point is, I think the commission, certainly I could benefit from a presentation by HPD in which you lay out how these CLTs work, who is responsible for what, maintenance, budgets, et cetera. Because, we've heard it's obviously been implemented in various places, but I certainly could benefit from an overview of how CLTs work and the relative responsibilities of the local nonprofits, who I assume are involved in this on a day-to-day basis, and as well as the city.
Yeah, those are all important issues that you raised, and I think we'd be very happy to provide that information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. Did you have further questions?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Next, Commissioner Marin.
Thank you, Chair. Stephen, thank you for that clarification, because I was curious as to the CLT for non-housing purposes, because that's in New York City, that's how we started. But I know that across the country there are various CLTs for various other reasons. So it is possible then, following what you have indicated, that there could be a specific CLT formed that applies for open space in this community. Is that correct?
The CLT here will be one, the plan is for there to be one CLT that will own the sites that are used for open space as well as for housing. And because a bulk of the CLT's purpose will be to support affordable housing, and the open space will complement that housing and be an amenity for people who live in the housing near those open space parcels. The general plan is for this CLT to be focused on housing. It would be incorporated as a CLT Housing Development Fund Corporation, which are the entities that HPD supervises in accordance with Article 11 of the Private Housing Finance Law. So that was maybe getting a little more into the technicalities of how this would be structured, but the idea is for this CLT to be focused on housing.
Understood. So is it anticipated that some of these lots may be built as housing?
As the presentation previewed, I think about 51 of the lots would be reserved for 1 to 2 family homes, new construction of 1 to 2 family homes, affordable homeownership opportunities. And I believe there's one site that would be zoned for commercial or community facility use that would also be transferred to the CLT. And then the balance of the sites would be used for open space.
Are these sites in a flood? Yeah, we talked about that they're in a flood zone. Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rampersad.
Thank you for the presentation. A lot of the questions I had about the CLT were already asked and answered. One of the questions I had was looking back on slide 4. If you can pull it up, I would appreciate it. I had 2 questions. I know you had one area, as you said, reserved for future drainage, and I know you started talking about that, but I just want to know if you can elaborate a little bit further of what exactly does that mean. And also, in terms of on Beach 39th Street, you were talking about area reserved for the school. Has there been any talks with the school construction authority? And if so, where are they at with developing a school for that location? And what is the size, approximate size of that area designated or reserved for the school?
Thank you for that. So the area that's reserved for future drainage, that's it's just that block in blue to the west, and it's intended just for I believe if a drainage site or drainage plant is needed by DEP in the future for work that's happening out there. We're making that site available for the agency to use for those purposes. And then for the future school site, conversations continue with SCA as far as the school need in the district. That the agency does monitor as development happens in this community, and when the need for a school is triggered, this site would be made available to SCA for them to advance a school there. I can get back to the commission on the exact size. I don't have it in front of me. I don't want to quote a wrong number. But that's where the latest is. I know it's a continuing condition that's being monitored by the SCA.
And one other question I had is regards to the Rockaway Freeway, where they're looking to upzone the R6A. Has there been any talks with the MTA to increase service out there?
Yes. So what I failed to mention as part of my presentation, both the Department of Parks and DOT have submitted testimony that they would like to provide to the commission. I'll be sending it over after this, and it details, what the current work has been in the area and the plans moving forward by those two agencies. So as and as with SCA, the conditions in this area is always being monitored by those agencies as well. And I'll provide that document following this hearing.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, I think we need to dig in a little bit, at least I'd like to dig in a little bit on the commercial corridor, because as I understand it, that was the aspect of this plan that really drew the most opposition from the community board, and I believe also the borough president, the notion of allowing for an upzoning. And I think your presentation explained that it's partly a way of absorbing the density that's not being allowed in the areas that are being downzoned. But it does seem a reasonable thing to think carefully about, is the notion of increasing density in such a flood prone area. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your thinking about the appropriateness of increasing that? I mean, I understand the transit aspects of it, but concerned about the flood prone nature of the area. And the extent to which it really is appropriate to build new housing there. The community board also has a position about home ownership versus rental, and I think that also is a dimension that needs to be thought about in, given the environmental hazards of the neighborhood. I don't know that home ownership, putting vulnerable homes in this area is such a wise idea, but I'm sure that you've all thought about that. So anyway, make the case for the commercial corridor a little bit more, please.
I'd reference us back to a lot of the community investment that's happening in the area. The work by the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as our agency partners with what they're doing, either with the park sites or DOT and DEP improving sewers to reduce flooding, and DOT improving street conditions, as well as looking to do expansions to their services in the area. In light of all of those investments, and those investments, are at the top, looking to protect this community from future flood events. With that happening, it seems like, that's like an appropriate method to allow for an increase in density, a modest increase in density in the neighborhood. As far as, we're looking at it as a two-pronged method. It's improving the housing opportunities for the current residents, as well as bringing in new residents. That's the way we're looking at it. So that's how I would address that. And I can follow up on that with you if you have comments on that. But I did want to touch upon the other comment that you made about the home ownership and the rental. The CLT, those residential developments will be home ownership. And with the multifamily sites, as we're calling them, we're not precluding the ability for any one of those sites to be a home ownership site. They were going to go through an open RFP, and the programming will be determined at that time. So there could be continued opportunities to provide more homeownership opportunities through that process.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I got to say that the waterfront plan that we heard about at the review session on Monday, which feeds directly into this, has some pretty scary images of what neighborhoods like this are going to look like in 30, 50 years. So if you start talking about investing, I mean, in barely more than a mortgage cycle, this neighborhood is going to be vastly different. So I think we have to think very carefully about adding new housing, much as we know that we need it for all of the reasons that you just articulated. No clear answers on it, but just one of the hard things that planners get to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Levin. Last call for commissioners here. If there are further questions or comments on Resilient Edgemere. Seeing none and no other members of the public wishing to testify on this item, I will note before I close the hearing here that on calendars number 18 to 22, which is the subject we're discussing right now, the record will remain open through 5:00 p.m. on Monday, April 11th, to receive written comments on the draft environmental impact statement. We'll just see if there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item before I close it. Seeing none, the hearing is closed. Madam Secretary, is there any other business before the commission today?
Did we lose our secretary?
She's muted.
She's muted.
Oh, she's muted.
It's more of a rhetorical question.
Yes,
Brian. I believe
no,
I
Chair
know the
Garodnick,
answer.
there is no further.
I believe I know the answer, but thank you for clarifying that there is no further business before the commission today. So I will thank the commissioners for their time and attention. I also would like to thank the staff of the Department of City Planning for all of their hard work in preparing the commission for today's hearing, and also for the briefing session that took place 2 days ago. And for the members of the public watching and interested, we appreciate your interest in these important topics. And with that, this hearing and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks all for coming. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.